Well, joining us now is Eddie Goldberg from the New York University Center for Global Affairs. He's also president of the NISA Group and author of The Joint Venture Nation, Why America Needs a New Foreign Policy. Thank you for joining us,
Hi,
Eddie.
thanks for having me.
So much buzz about Russia in the news right now. What's your take? Do you believe having President-elect Donald Trump push for a different relation with Vladimir Putin is the way to go?
No, I think that's actually totally incorrect. Russia is, as my friend Tom Friedman would say, a kleptocracy. We have no common interests, whether in terms of our moral interest or our trade relationships. I mean, just look at trade. You know, our trade with Indonesia and Thailand is larger than with Russia. We have no connection, and really we're at a point where we have sanctions against Russia because they violated the only territorial treaty ever violated since World War II.
But surely, Eddie, there must be some common ground that we can find with Russia because, for example, we have a major crisis happening in Syria. It's been going on for 5 years right now. Russia has since joined in those efforts in that part of the world. The question, I guess, for a lot of people is, can we have a policy or some kind of a joint venture with Russia that will align our interests, at least when it comes, for example, to fighting ISIS?
Well, yes, actually, that's what I that's what I do advocate in my book. You know, you were disagreed with them on one area, actually punishing them with sanctions on one, but still, even though they have this very minuscule economy, you know, their economy is smaller than Spain's, it's more than Italy's. So even though they have this minuscule economy, still they are a major player because they border all these areas in the world. They're a large nuclear power, and they have a veto in the UN Security Council. So yes, we have to have relationships with them, but we have to choose our areas and not be blanketly friendly with them.
But it's hard to ignore, Eddie, the fact that you look in the Middle East, the Palestinians are now reaching out to him. Syria is a close buddy of his. I mean, you see his reach in the Middle East, an area like the Middle East. If you were advising Donald Trump, who wants a different relation with Vladimir Putin, your advice would be what?
My advice actually would be to follow Obama's manner of dealing with Putin, to deal with him, work with him on the issues that are important to us, and punish him where we think he's violated international law.
You, in your book, it's interesting, you say that Russia is one of the only states in the world that clings to a 19th century view of sovereignty, a view that puts it philosophically in conflict with its Western neighbors and perverts its view of the globalized world. What is this 19th century view?
Well, it's that Russia believes that it needs countries next to it that it can control to protect its territory. So it needs to control the Ukraine. It has fantasies of controlling the Baltic states. You know, in a globalized world where everyone's trading, you don't have to worry about someone coming to attack you. The connections are there. Take the China relationship, because I think that's the point here. You know, it used to be taught in international affairs that what you have to fear is a rising power. So the example was Germany before World War I. You know, China's the rising power, right, but it's so interconnected economically with the world that it's a force for stability. Right.
But it's interesting because you also see President-elect Donald Trump taking a different approach to China. What we see, Chinese President Xi Jinping, took a swipe at him today, saying there's no point in blaming globalization for the world's problems. Do you agree that when you're looking at issues like Brexit and these economies in Europe having these issues, do you think that his approach towards Russia, possibly doing away with one China policy or doing something far more extreme, closer relations with Taiwan, is the way to go?
I think doing away with the one China policy, which started with Kissinger and Nixon in 1972, is a horrible mistake because what he's doing, one of the things that's amazing me about Donald Trump, he seems to have no historic knowledge. He seems to not know how the world developed before today. So, you know, by saying we're going to talk to Taiwan, he doesn't understand, threatens the legitimacy of the Beijing government.
What's your biggest worry in the foreign policy world going into this new administration?
My biggest worry in the foreign policy is that we will revert back to a 1910 world, 1913 world, where every country would be out for itself.
That's a scary world.
That's right. That's a very scary
But your
world.
point about China being interconnected and how they are, by all extents and purposes, our main competitor for superpower status, but divided we stay. It's a concept that we have here in the United States. Divided we fall. Correct. If we're not united. Right. China is interconnected with all these economies, and so it doesn't make sense to isolate them at all, and nor would they want to be.
No, correct. They don't have no desire to be. And we're saying, yes, China, we're going to do that. We are basically making problems where problems don't exist. God knows what reason.
All right, Eddie Goldberg. The book is called The Joint Ventured Nation, Why America Needs a New Foreign Policy. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.